Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamutire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, today we're starting new chapter, chapter 29. Krishna and the gopis meet for the Arras Dance. Text number 1 onwards. Shri Badarayane Ruvacha Bhagwan api taratri shardut full mallika vikshya rantum manaschakre yoga mayam upashitaha. Shri Badarayani said, Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in all opulences. Yet, upon seeing those autumn nights scented with blossoming jasmine flowers, he turned his mind towards loving affairs. To fulfill his purposes, he employed his internal potency. So many things Shukdev Goswami wants to make sure the readers understand. First of all, he said, Shri Bhagwan Api, although he is Lord, he is the Supreme Lord, but still he turned his mind towards loving affairs. And for that, what did he do? He employed his internal potency. So all his pastimes, now especially this Ras Leela pastime, it's all under Yog Maya, not in Mahamaya. So no illusory potency, Mahamaya that works on us is working on Krishna. And none of his pastimes, especially these pastimes, because Shukdev Goswami knew people can misunderstand these pastimes. And Prabhupada in Krishna book, he has given a wonderful description of this. So before we go and discuss anything else, I wanted to read that and discuss that first. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the Arras Dance took place on the full moon night of the Sharad season. From the statements of previous chapters, it appears that the festival of Govardhan Puja was performed just after the dark moon night of the month of Kartik. And thereafter, the ceremony of Bhratri Dvitiya, or Bhaiya Dooj, that we celebrate. Then the wrath of Indra was exhibited in the shape of torrents of rain and hailstones. And Lord Krishna held up Govardhan Hill for 7 days, until the 9th day of the moon. Thereafter, on the 10th day, the inhabitants of Vrindavan were talking amongst themselves about the wonderful activities of Krishna. And the next day, Ekadashi was observed by Nanda Maharaj. On the next day, Dwadashi, Nanda Maharaj went to take bath in the Ganges and was arrested by one of the men of Varuna. Then he was released by Lord Krishna. Then Nanda Maharaj, along with the cowherd men, was shown the spiritual sky. So this all happened until 12th day, Dwadashi. In this way, the full moon night of the Sharad season came to an end. So 2 or 3 days later, when the full moon came, the full moon night of Ashwin is called Sharad Purnima. But in the shloka, it says, Sharad Utful Mallika. So it was Sharad Purnima. But there is a catch here. Okay. The catch was Krishna did this pastime on Kartik Purnima, a Purnima in the beginning of Kartik season, because then the gopis will do their Katyayani Vrata to get Krishna. So, okay, Sharad Purnima, I'm sorry. But then gopis did the Katyayani Vrata for 1 full year to get Krishna's association. So this is what Prabhupada is saying. It appears from the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna had to wait another year for such a moon before enjoying the rasa dance with the gopis. At the age of 7 years, he lifted Govardhan Hill. Therefore, the rasa dance took place during his 8th year. So it was not on that time, it was 1 year later. From the Vedic literature, it appears that when a theatrical actor dances among many dancing girls, the group dance is called Arras Dance. When Krishna saw the full moon night of the Sharad season, decorated with various seasonal flowers, especially the Mallika flowers, which are very fragrant, he remembered the gopis' prayers to goddess Katyayani, wherein they prayed for Krishna to be their husband. He thought that the full moon night of the Sharad season was just suitable for a nice dance. So their desire to have Krishna as their husband would then be fulfilled. Okay, so this Sharad Purnima happens in the beginning of Kartik, and then the end of Kartik is Kartik Purnima. So that's why this 1 year of wait was there. The words used in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam are Bhagwan Api. This means that although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus he has no desire that needs to be fulfilled, because he's always full with 6 opulences. So it's not that he's lacking something or he needs something. He's full, completely full. He's Atmaram. He still wanted to enjoy the company of the gopis in the Ras dance. Although he's Bhagwan. Why? Because he wanted to fulfill the desire of the gopis. This is what they pray to goddess Katyayani. The specific words used in Srimad Bhagavatam are Yogamayam Upashrita, which means that this dancing with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya, not Mahamaya. The dancing of young boys and girls within the material world is in the kingdom of Mahamaya, or the external energy. The Rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis is on the platform of Yogamaya. The difference between the platforms of Yogamaya and Mahamaya is compared in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the difference between gold and iron. From the viewpoint of metallurgy, gold and iron are both metals, but the quality and obviously the cost is completely different. Similarly, although the Rasa dance and Lord Krishna's association with the gopis appear like the ordinary mixing of young boys and girls, the quality is completely different. The difference is appreciated by great Vaishnavas because they can understand the difference between love of Krishna and lust. So gold is love of Krishna and iron is like lust. Lust comes in Mahamaya category and love of Krishna comes in Yogamaya category. Huge difference, although they both look metal. On the Mahamaya platform, dances take place on the basis of sense gratification. But when Krishna called the gopis by sounding his flute, they very hurriedly rushed towards a part of the Ras dance with the transcendental desire to satisfy Krishna. The author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, has explained that lust means sense gratification, means my sense gratification. Jivera bhoga ichha dhare kamna. Krishnere priti ichha dhare premna. There's a difference. And love also means sense gratification, but for Krishna. In other words, when activities are enacted on the platform of personal sense gratification, they're called material activities. But when they are enacted for the satisfaction of Krishna, then they are spiritual activities. But we got to be careful, very, very careful, that we are really performing activities for satisfaction of Krishna. Sometimes we have our ulterior motives in performing anything, and we just we just name it. Oh, I'm doing it for Krishna, Krishna's pleasure. Are we sure? And sometimes we might do something which is not legally correct. So or maybe it could be morally incorrect. And we give it a name. Oh, I'm doing it for Krishna. Are we sure? So we got to be pretty sure. Otherwise, it can come under Mahamaya or karmic activity, and we have to get the reaction. Simple as that. On any platform of activities, the principle of sense gratification is there. But on the spiritual platform, sense gratification is for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Whereas on the material platform, it's for the performer. For example, on the material platform, when a servant serves a master, he is trying to satisfy not the senses of his master, but rather his own senses. The servant would not serve the master if the payment stopped. That means that the servant engages himself in the service of the master just to satisfy his own senses. On the spiritual platform, however, the servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serves Krishna without payment, and he continues his service in all conditions, whether he is appreciated or not, whether he is exploited or not, whether he is whatever the situation, he continues with his service because there is love for Krishna. That is spiritual platform. That's the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness. As mentioned above, it appears that Krishna enjoyed the Arras Dance with the gopis when he was 8 years old. At that time, many of the gopis were married because in India, especially in those days, girls were married at a very early age. There are even instances of a girl giving birth to a child at the age of 12. Under the circumstances, all the gopis who wanted to have Krishna as their husband were already married. At the same time, they continued to hope that Krishna would be their husband. And that is why they did this Katyayani Vrata. Their attitude toward Krishna was that of Paramar love, or love outside wedlock. Therefore, the loving affairs of Krishna with the gopis are called Parakiyaras. The attitude of a married man who desires another wife, or a wife who desires another husband, is called Parakiyaras. Now, this is something no scripture, no other scripture will talk. Only Krishna with the gopis, he had this relationship. Why? Prabhupada explains. Actually, Krishna is the husband of everyone because he is the supreme enjoyer. Everybody, everything is his energy. Nothing is beyond his energy, beyond his control, beyond his creation. So his energy serving him, there is no fault. But if we look at it differently, then it's a problem with ourselves. And on top of it, the gopis wanted Krishna to be their husband. But factually, there was no possibility of his marrying all the gopis. But because they had that natural tendency to accept Krishna as a supreme husband, the relationship between the gopis and Krishna is called Parakiyaras. This Parakiyaras is ever existent in Golok Vrindavan, in the spiritual sky, where there is no possibility of the inebriety, which characterizes Parakiyaras in the material world. In the material world, Parakiyaras is abominable, whereas in the spiritual world, it is present in the super excellent relationship of Krishna and the gopis. There are many relationships with Krishna: master and servant, friend and friend, parent and son, and lover and beloved. Out of all these rasas, the Parakiyaras is considered to be the topmost in the spiritual world. In material world, it is considered the most abominable. But this is the difference between material and spiritual worlds. Material world is perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So what's topmost in spiritual world is bottommost in the material world. Hard to understand. This material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It's just like the reflection of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. The topmost part of the tree is seen as the lowest part. Similarly, Parakiyaras, when pervertedly reflected in this material world, is most abominable. Therefore, when people imitate the Arras Dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy or try to enjoy the perverted, abominable reflection of the transcendental Parakiyaras. There is no possibility of enjoying this transcendental Parakiyaras within the material world. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that one should not imitate this Parakiyaras even in dream or imagination. Those who do so drink the most deadly poison. Prabhupada is warning us here. So we cannot imitate this Parakiyaras. And we cannot imitate any of the pastimes of Krishna. People generally want to imitate this one because it just fulfills their carnal desires. That's all. Nothing to do with understanding philosophically or in truth, in tattva, Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. It's because I want to enjoy opposite sex in more ways than I can even think of. Then I just call it a name. Oh, this is my Ras Leela. And the songs also come. Oh, if Krishna does, this is Ras Leela. If I do, it is abominable. What nonsense. Krishna's Ras Leela is not under Mahamaya category. It's completely under Yogamaya category. And those who want to imitate Krishna's Ras Leela, before this Ras Leela, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill. So before we get to Ras Leela, let's lift a Govardhan Hill. Okay, forget about Govardhan Hill. We can't lift that. Just lift a table on the little finger of your left hand for 7 days, 7 nights. Just stand there and keep it up. Can't do that. Nobody can do that. And they want to imitate Krishna's Ras Leela. Before that, Krishna danced on Kaliya's foot. Okay, let's get a snake, little bitty snake. Kaliya was a huge snake. Let's get a little bitty snake and you try to dance on it. So you cannot imitate Krishna. There's no way. But people like to do so. And that is why Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken. So we understand who is Krishna and who we are. What is our position. And Shukdev Goswami did spend 5 chapters on gopis' pastimes with Krishna. And when we were discussing first and second canto are like the lotus feet of Krishna, third and fourth canto are, I think, the calves of Krishna. And then we go above fifth and sixth canto are like thighs. Seventh is his lotus navel. Eighth is his waist. Eighth is above his chest. Ninth is his arms. 10th canto is his lotus face. In the 10th canto, these 5 chapters are like the smile on the lips, on the lotus lips of Krishna. That is 5 chapters. They're so pure. But we have to understand it properly. And that is for this reason, Shukdev Goswami spent so much time speaking 9 cantos, for us to understand who is Krishna. And before these 28 chapters, to understand Krishna's pastimes properly. And then he came to these chapters. So we don't misunderstand. Prabhupada is giving his elaborate purport in Krishna book. He further says, when Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, desired to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sharad season, exactly at that very moment, the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying its most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sharad season is the most beautiful night in the year. In the Indian city of Agra in Uttar Pradesh province, there is a great monument called the Taj Mahal, which is a tomb made of first-class marble stone. During the night of the full moon of the Sharad season, many foreigners go to see the beautiful reflections of the moon on the tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated even today for its beauty. So for all the full moon nights, there are 12 full moon nights in a year. The Sharad season, Sharad Purnima, is considered the most beautiful night. In fact, it's also said every Purnima, Krishna does his Ras Leela. But the Sharad Purnima, it's a special Ras Leela. And that is why every Purnima, especially on Sharad Purnima, we do it every Purnima just. So there is a tradition that we leave a pot of rice or sweet rice, kheer, on the roof, especially of Sharad Purnima, and put one tulsi leaf, cover it up, leave it whole night there, because Krishna and gopis, they are dancing, they're doing their Ras Leela, and in our heart we want to offer them the sweet rice, because when they get tired, they get hungry, so sweet rice is there, they can enjoy and then continue with their dance. So devotees do that. When the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kumkum. When a husband long separated from his wife returns home, he decorates the face of his wife with red kumkum. This long expected moonrise of the Sharad season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. When Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon, the red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers. All the gopis were by nature very much attracted to Krishna's beauty, and when they heard the vibration of his flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So this was the mood of the gopis. And look what they did. Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, and Krishna was at the banks of Yamuna, far away from Vrindavan. And he is just playing on the flute. But when he plays on the flute, the sound that comes out of the flute is just basically calling each and every gopi by their names. This is Krishna. He can do anything and everything. Is the sound of the flute calling every gopi is hearing her name. Come to the banks of Yamuna in Banshivata. Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran very swiftly, their earrings swung back and forth. They all rushed towards a place known as Banshivata. Some of them were engaged in milking cows, but they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and put it in a milk pan on the stove to boil, but she did not care whether the milk overboiled and spilled. She immediately left to go see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families. But they left all such engagements and immediately rushed towards a spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some were engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating, but caring nothing to serve their husbands nor eat, they immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with cosmic ointments and with cosmetic ointments and to dress themselves very nicely before going to Krishna. But unfortunately, they could not finish their cosmetic decorations or put on their clothes in the right way because of their anxiety to meet Krishna immediately. Their faces were decorated hurriedly and were haphazardly finished. Some even put the lower part of the clothes on the upper part of the bodies and upper part of clothes on the lower part of the bodies. And they just left. That is why Gopis' love for Krishna is considered the highest, the topmost, the purest. Nobody can understand their love. They did not even fear what the society will say, what my parents, what my husband, what my in-laws, what my children will say. They just left. Nobody can imitate Gopis. Nobody. Okay, so let's come back to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that was Prabhupada's commentary in Krishna book for us to make sure we understand there's nothing material, lusty in these pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, or in any of the Krishna's pastimes, obviously. We'll study more when he goes to Dwarka and he marries 16,108 queens or princesses, and they all became queens. There's nothing lusty in that dealings either. Text 2. Tadodu Raja Kakubha Karar Mukham Prachya Vilimpan Runena Shantame Sacharsh Ninam Udgachucho Mrijan Priya Priyaya Iva Dirga Darshanaha. The moon then rose, anointing the face of the eastern horizon with the reddish hue of his comforting rays, and thus dispelling the pain of all who watched him rise. The moon was like a beloved husband who returns after a long absence and adorns the face of his beloved wife with red kumkum. It's a nice poetic shloka. Young Krishna engaged his internal potency, and she immediately created an exciting atmosphere for conjugal love. Drishtva kumudvantam akhandam akmandalam ramananabham navakunkumarunam anam chatat komal gobhiranjitam jago kalam vam drisham manoharam. Lord Krishna saw the unbroken disk of the full moon glowing with the red effulgence of newly applied vermilion or kumkum, as if it were the face of the goddess of fortune. He also saw the kumud lotuses opening in response to the moon's presence, and the forest gently illumined by its rays. Thus the Lord began to play sweetly on his flute, attracting the minds of the beautiful-eyed gopis. The word Jago in this verse indicates that Lord Krishna played songs on his flute, as confirmed in text 40 by the words Ka Stri Angate Kallapadayanta Venu Gita. The word Rama may indicate not only Lord Vishnu's consort, but also Srimati Radharani, the original goddess of fortune. Lord Krishna appeared in the dynasty of the moon god, and the moon plays a prominent role here in preparing for the Lord's entrance into the midst of the Arras Dance. So this is how moon was displaying its beauty, its its rays and red effulgence all over the sky. Nishamya Geetam Tadangavardhanam Brajastriya Krishna Grihita Manasa Ajagmur Anya Lakshitodyamaha Sayatra Kanto Javalol Kundalaha. When the young women of Vrindavan heard Krishna's flute song, which arouses romantic feelings, their minds were captivated by the Lord. They went to where their lover waited, each unknown to the others, moving so quickly that their earrings swung back and forth. Evidently, each gopi went secretly, hoping to avoid advertising to her rivals the fact that young Krishna was in the mood for romantic affairs. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti poetically describes the situation as follows. Krishna instigated a terrible act of thievery in Vrindavan when he played on his flute. The song of his flute entered through the ears of the gopis into the inner treasure chamber of their hearts. That wonderful music stole all their most valuable possessions, their sobriety, shyness, fear, and discrimination, along with their minds. And in a split second, this music delivered all these goods to Krishna. Now each gopi went to beg the Lord to return her personal property. This sobriety, shyness, fear, discrimination, everything. Each beautiful young girl was thinking, I have to capture that great thief. And thus they went forward, each unknown to the others. Duhantyo abhiyayu kashchit doham hitva sam utsuka vayo adhishritya samyavaham anudvasya para yayuhu. Some of the girls were milking cows when they heard Krishna's flute. They stopped milking and went off to meet him. Some left milk curdling on the stove and others left cakes burning in the oven. The eagerness of these cowherd girls, so lovingly devoted to young Krishna, is shown here. Pariveshyantyastadhitva payayantyah shishunpayah shushrushantyah patina kashchit ashrantayo apasya bhojanam limpantyah pramrijantayonya anjantyah kaschalochane vyatyasta vastrabharanaha kashit krishnantikam yayuhu. Some of them were getting dressed, feeding milk to the infants, or rendering personal service to their husbands. But they all gave up these duties and went to meet Krishna. Other gopis were taking their evening meals, rubbing their bodies with cleansing oils, putting on cosmetics, or applying kajal to their eyes. But all the gopis stopped these activities at once, and though their clothes and ornaments were in complete disarray, rushed off to Krishna. Tavaryamana patibhi pitribhir bratri bandhubhi govinda prastatmano na nyavartanta mohita. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop them, but Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Some of the young gopis were married and their husbands tried to stop them. The unmarried gopis had to deal with their fathers and brothers and other relatives. None of these relatives would have ordinarily allowed even the young girls' dead bodies to go alone into the forest at night. But Lord Krishna had already engaged his internal potency, and this entire romantic episode unfolded without interference. So they all just left, as if they're completely captivated by this flute. They just didn't know what they were doing. Antargriha gatah kashit gopya alabdha vinirkama krishnam tad bhavana yukta dadhyur mililit lochana. Some of the gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their houses, and instead They remained home with eyes closed, meditating upon him, upon Krishna in pure love. Throughout the 10th canto, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives elaborate poetic commentaries on Lord Krishna's pastimes. It's not always possible to include these extensive descriptions, but we'll quote in its entirety on his comments on this verse. It's because Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when he is writing, it's something very, very different. In this context, we'll make our analysis according to the method described by Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjwal Nilamani. There are two categories of gopis: the eternally perfect Nitya Siddhas and those who have become perfect by practicing Bhakti Yoga, the Sadhana Siddhas. The Sadhana Siddhas are of two categories: those who belong to special groups and those who do not. And there are also two classes of the gopis belonging to special groups, namely the Shrutichari, who come from the group of personified Vedas, and Rishichari, who come from the group of sages who saw Lord Ramchandra in the Dandakaranya forest. So they all took the form of gopis because they had this desire to have conjugal relationships with the Lord. So different categories of gopis. This same fourfold categorization of the gopis is given in the Padma Purana. It is understood that some of the gopis were personified Vedic literature. So Vedic literature also personified. They became Shruti-chari gopis. While others were reborn sages, Munichari, daughters of cowherds, the gopis, or demigod maidens. But by no means, my dear king, are any of them ordinary humans. Here we are informed that although the gopis appeared to be human cowherd girls, they actually were not. Thus, the contention that they are mortals is refuted. They all were spiritually very, very advanced. The daughters of the cowherds, referred to here as Gopakanyas, must be eternally perfect, since we never hear of them having executed any sadhana. They were not doing any sadhana in the Vraj, they were already perfect. Their apparent sadhana of worshipping goddess Katyayani in the role of gopis merely manifests a manner of playing like human beings. And Bhagavatam narrates the account of this worship only to show how they had fully taken on the role of cowherd girls. That the Kanya gopis are actually Nitya Siddhas. So they are eternally perfect devotees of the Lord, is established by the statement in Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Ras Pratibhavitapi, which proves that they are the Lord's spiritual pleasure potency. Similarly, we have the words of Gautamiya Tantra, different scriptures. Further corroboration of the eternal perfection is that these gopis, being co-eternal with Lord Krishna, their lover, are mentioned along with him in the 18 syllable mantra, the 10 different mantras. Lots of technicalities are given here. The Devakanyas, daughters of the demigods, were mentioned in the verse beginning Sambhavastva Amarastriya, are explained in Sri Ujjwal Nilamani as partial expansions of the gopis who are eternally perfect. So there are different categories of gopis, and some of them were stopped. Why? Because those gopis still had some purification to go through. The Rishichari gopis are the Sadhana Siddhas, as explained in different scriptures. So long purport given here. I just want to go towards the end of this paragraph. Other gopis, however, because of not getting the good fortune of associating with the Nitya Siddha gopis and other advanced gopis, had not achieved the stage of prema. And so their contamination was not completely burnt away. Even they're perfect. But to come to the level of full means love for Krishna, they had to do. They had to go a little bit more, do more tapasya. So they entered the company of their cowherd husbands, and after sexual union with them, gave birth to children. But a short time later, even these gopis developed their purva rag by hankering intensely for the physical association of Krishna, a hankering they acquired by associating with the advanced gopis. Becoming worthy recipients of the mercy of the perfected gopis, they assumed transcendental bodies fit to be enjoyed by Krishna. And when Yogmaya failed to help them overcome their husband's attempt to keep them from going out, they felt themselves cast into the worst calamity. Viewing their husbands, brothers, fathers, and other family members as enemies, they came close to dying. Just as other women might remember their mothers or other relatives at the time of death. These gopis remembered the sole friend of their life, Krishna, as stated in the present verse of Bhagavatam, beginning with the word Antar. So they just went inside their hearts, and they just remembered Krishna. It is implied that those ladies who were not able to exit or get out of their houses to go to Krishna because they were held back by their husbands who were standing before them with sticks in their hands, scolding them. Although these gopis were perpetually absorbed in love for Krishna, at that particular time they meditated upon him and cried out within, Alas, alas, O only friend of our life. O ocean of the artistic skills of the Vrindavan forest, please let us become your girlfriends in some future life, because at this time we cannot see your lotus-like face with our eyes. So be it. We shall look upon you within our minds. Each of them lamenting to herself in this way, the gopis stood with their eyes shut and meditated deeply upon it. So, of course, we cannot imitate gopis. They are on a very, very high pedestal, very high platform. But understanding that we cannot be in Vrindavan all the time. We have other duties to perform. But we can always meditate on Krishna, meditate on Krishna's pastimes, meditate on Krishna's places of pastimes in Vrindavan, different places we have been to, we can read about. Now, internet is there, we can see the pictures or see the videos also, so that we can meditate on these places, these pastimes, on Krishna, Krishna's associates, gopis, and we'll attain the same destination. This is how powerful it is. Duhsah preshta viraha, tivra tapa dhuta shubha, dhyana prapta chitta shalesha, nirvritya kshina mangala. Tameva paramatmanam jarvadhyapi sangataha jahur gunamayam deham sadhya prakshina bandhana. For those gopis who could not go to see Krishna, intolerable separation from their beloved caused an intense agony that burned away all impious karma. By meditating upon him, they realized his embrace and the ecstasy. They then felt exhausted the material piety. Although Lord Krishna is the supreme soul, these girls simply thought of him as a male lover and associated with him in that intimate mood. Thus, a karmic bondage was nullified, and they abandoned their gross material bodies. They abandoned their gross material bodies, means they got spiritual bodies right away, means they died, basically. But Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, here Shukdev Goswami speaks in a peculiar way. He presents the intimate object the gopis attained as if it were an external idea, thus keeping its true nature secret from outsiders. While at the same time he reveals to the confidential devotees, well versed in the scientific conclusions of devotional service, the internal meaning that is his real purpose. Thus, to consider Shukdev, Thus, to outsiders, Shukdev says that Krishna gave the gopis liberation, but to the confidential hearer, Shukdev reveals that when the gopis experienced separation from their beloved, there arose in them both immeasurable unhappiness and immeasurable happiness, and that they gradually achieved their desired goal. Because thought of Krishna is not different than Krishna himself. So powerful. Thus, the verse can be understood as follows. Because of their intolerable separation from their beloved, the gopis felt terrible agony, by which they caused all inauspicious things to tremble. In other words, when people in general hear of the gopis' extreme agony in separation from their beloved, they abandon thousands of inauspicious things, things even as fearsome as the subterranean fires of millions of universes or the powerful poison swallowed by Lord Shiva. More specifically, those who hear of the gopis' love and separation give up their terrible false ego and thinking themselves defeated are shaken. When the gopis meditated on Lord Achyuta, he became manifest and personally came to them, and they experienced great joy by embracing his body, which was full of transcendental love for them. The gopis also experienced great joy by exhibiting personal characteristics and a sense of identification appropriate to such love. That joy made all their good fortune, both material and spiritual, seem paltry by comparison. So it has both unhappiness and happiness. Unhappiness in the sense they could not go, so they were terribly suffering. But in that moment, the thought of Krishna and in the thought process, they just embraced him in their hearts. So that was a moment of unlimited happiness. So both happened at the same time. It's just something beyond our even imagination. How is it possible? So it's a long, long purport. If you get a chance, you can read it on your own because it's way beyond my understanding, my realizations. So I'll just come to the last paragraph. Some authorities, however, maintain that the gopis who were kept back in their houses did not have children. According to them, whenever such words as apatya, children, are used in verses yet to come, these words refer to children of co-wives, to adopted children, or to nephews and nieces. Okay, different acharyas have different realizations, so they're just explaining that. But then again, so I guess we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, so I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.